I've got quite the story to share with you all, and no, it's not of Trevor's vasectomy.
Whoa! Dude, I love gay people now!
No, we're a good guy. We're trying to save the kids. Look, we're saving you! Saving!
Okay, so I was born in... currently live in Mount...
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Goobers and Screens book club. I'm here with Brandon. Say hi, Brandon.
No.
Okay, and today we're talking about we're continuing our discussion of the Chimera arc. This is part 2 of our long series about it.
Yeah, of our probably little trilogy. I have read roughly the second third of it. Really, I'm not quite to the second third yet. I'm honestly speaking, I'm a bit over half.
Yeah,
I'm over halfway done with the arc. I'm a bit over half. I think I'm halfway through with the arc anyway.
You're getting there. Trilogy, quadrilogy doesn't necessarily matter exactly the number, but hey, it's going to be a long discussion. And
I do intend to finish it tomorrow, and it'll be a week for you guys, but we will record the next bit tomorrow.
Yeah. And so, to give at least some of my beginning thoughts on this, just a little bit, because I know you're the one who's like reading it and for the first time, I enjoyed the middle bits that he was reading. You get a lot more of the fighting, and now I can finally start talking about some of the things I truly enjoy from it. Because as much as I like the first part of it, the fights are really good. Whenever I'm invested in a shonen, I typically gravitate towards the fights and how well written they are. And in this department, I don't think Hunter x Hunter disappoints. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say I enjoyed the fights, but for me personally, well, I mean, obviously I love fights and everything. I enjoyed the first third more than this part. Just reading, I really liked the whole setup, and that's not to say anything bad about this part. I felt like the fights, they were good, and I feel like if I watched the anime, I would appreciate them a lot more. It's just with the medium, and especially because at the time of Togashi writing this, he was sick. I can feel that maybe the fights were shorter than maybe what they should have been to like flesh out a lot of stuff. I found myself with some of the fights kind of being like, okay, let's just get to the next bit a little bit. They weren't bad. It's just compared to everything else in the arc, which is much more my style, like what I prefer to do, like read whenever I'm reading. I felt, I mean, not that they held it back. It's just, yeah, it was the feeling of, okay, I kind of wish we'd move on to the next part. Like I can think specifically it was Gon versus the Batgirl and the Owl guy. That little fight there, and honestly, we'll get there. The Killua versus the octopus guy, and then the Dart siblings. I won't say they're bad. Personally, I didn't care for those fights.
The anime made them a lot more fun.
I definitely believe that. I felt like the fights were lacking a little bit.
It's one of those where when Togashi was sick writing this, he did good writing the basics of the fights. I think the anime just helped make them a lot more enjoyable. And that's not I can't comment too much on it. I've only seen bits and pieces of the manga, but at least from the anime, I love so many of these fights. That's the medium. Usually with fighting, they're better in anime because they're animated, they're fluid. You actually get to see the action happen as compared to still pictures. So,
but manga fights can be phenomenal.
Well, they can be.
It's just, and it's also the expectation of like, this is the Chimera Ant arc, to have these, for lack of a better word, average fights. They're not bad, but like I also personally wouldn't call them anything spectacular. Like to have these average fights like in like the Chimera Ant arc, like maybe my expectations were a bit skewed there, and I'll openly say that bias. But
Yeah.
I told Kyle earlier I am going to eventually at some point watch the Chimera ant arc because I'm really enjoying it and I want to get that anime medium experience.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can almost guarantee I will appreciate those fights more. It's just like what you call it with Jujutsu Kaisen and the Shibuya arc. I cannot wait to see that animated because I know they are going to do Yuji and Toto versus Mahito so well.
Yeah, they're going to do a lot of justice. And sorry, what I was trying to say was hopefully whenever we get to these fight bits, I can elaborate my thoughts well enough to hopefully change your mind on some of them, because some of them, like, I enjoy a lot of these fights. The only one I did forget about was Gon fighting the bat and owl, but we'll get to that. The rest I remember fairly well, so they stuck out a lot in the anime. So let's dig into it, I guess.
Let us.
Yeah,
so we start off. I'm pretty sure the first thing was the spiders.
Yeah, the phantom trope.
And we get a little bit of narrator exposition, like the ants are going on and are going around, and are spreading out.
Yeah, they're going around converting others into ants, and since they're attacking Meteor City, the spiders' hometown, they go there in order to get rid of the threat. And in this section of the anime, it lasted 2 episodes in the anime, as far as I can remember.
2 episodes, okay. It was like not quite half of a volume, so that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, like 2 to 3 episodes, and I really enjoyed this section because anything with the phantom trope immediately sticks out in a positive way. But remember in York New how we didn't really get to see a lot of their powers?
Yeah, this was like the introduction to a lot of their abilities.
And I think this is a perfect place to do it because, like, the spiders, this is a reminder that they're powerful. Like, just because these are chimera ants, that means kind of jack shit. And we get to see a lot of the great fights. Like, we get to see Kabuto show off her power, the vacuum chick fight the spider. It's finally killing off a lot of the ants. We get justice done for Ponzu whenever the weird dancing guy obliterates him.
Uh-huh.
My favorite standout fights from this were it's my second favorite probably being Finks fighting whoever he did with his power of if he just rotates his arm, it just charges up his punch. So if
he just evaporated that guy.
the more he like winds up, the more it stacks. I just think it's a really funny power. But with my favorite one in the anime, this was a great moment. Like the VA did really well as Phaeton because Phaeton fights the scorpion lady. And
yeah, the hot one.
Literally the hot one as in gets disintegrated by a sun.
Absolutely melted. That was my favorite. That was I really honestly I enjoyed all of these fights. But that was my favorite fight. That was my favorite fight.
In the anime, because his power, if I remember correctly, it's like if he takes damage, the more damage he takes, the more he can like return it in the form of literal heat.
Essentially, that's how I understood it.
He's one of the most dangerous members because he can just make a miniature sun that disintegrates. And in the anime, as this chick's like evaporating into bones, he's just cackling to himself. It's very disturbing. And I like how whenever it happened, the other Phantom members like, oh, we need to go now. And then
they were like, uh-oh.
Whenever you think it was bad, whenever they had to cover their ears when Uvo was about to yell, whenever Phaeton fought, like, shit, we need to leave now or we're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And now
this also served to kind of put them back because I think after York knew some readers' perspectives of them might have been, okay, well, these guys aren't really a threat. I mean, we see 2 of them die.
Yeah.
But this is like, no, okay. Like, we have the direct comparison of these guys, like these ants that they are fighting killed 2 people we know are very skilled. And then we get, okay, and they just get absolutely eviscerated by these.
Yeah, and then the Phantom trope, they really don't, they put in a little bit of effort, like the vacuum chick whenever she's fighting that guy, and like they sweat maybe a little bit, but it's not enough to sweat buckets. That even Phaeton, like he gets hit a few times and it's like, okay, I'm gonna summon the wrath of Ra, the sun god.
Yeah.
So I just enjoyed these fights, and as you said, it was a reminder that the ants do not topple the spiders on the food chain.
And we also got to see a little bit of the, I can't remember her name, the
Kabuto.
Zoldyck chick.
Yeah, Kaluto. How hers is
Kaluto, is that
paper-
really her name?
Kaluto.
I'll trust you on that. Yeah, where she like feels like inferior to them, and that's interesting because as a Zoldyck, you would think that she would be like super strong, but then you think back on it, it's like, well, Killua has really done a ton of growing as well.
And for Kaluto, I mean, she's still a little child. Like she's still powerful, but compared to somebody that can melt her paper out of reality, or the more experienced members of the trope, I could see why she'd feel a little insignificant. It was a nice little arc to show that she's not as weak as she seems.
Yeah, and she specifically says that she wants to get her brother back, and personally, it could be Killua, and I think it probably is. But it isn't necessarily, because we see the family portrait. So it's like, what brother is she referring to, and how is she's going to get her brother back? Is it Killua? I don't know. You might know. I don't know. It's an interesting plot point. The whole Zoldyck and Killua being one of, if not Hisoka's probably still my favorite character, but Killua is really I love Gon and Killua.
Would you say Killua is your favorite of the main group?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'd say Gon is a close second there. I really like Gon.
Yeah, but I enjoyed the section, and now Feitan, if you remember their bet, it was whoever killed the leader, I think, became the de facto leader of the Phantom Troop. So yeah, now Feitan definitely is the de facto leader.
Yeah, as if he wasn't already.
But then, yeah, we get some stuff with the spiders. It was a good break from what's happening, and then we see what happens where they go into East Gorto and they have some of the ant fights that occur.
Yeah, and we have Gon and Killua learning that the selection's already begun with villages. And then that's like, okay, like we probably need to do something about this, and then that leads into Killua like starting a resistance. But there's a couple things that happen before that. I really like how it was Killua tells Gon to follow before they split up. He tells Gon to follow the plan, and Gon is like yeah, okay. And Killua is like, no. He's like I want you to listen to me. He's like, follow the plan. He gets mad at him, and Gon was like surprised. He was like what? He's like, where's this coming from? And I really enjoyed that whole scene where it's just like, again, it's a good one of the most interesting things to see over this arc has been Killua's like his thought process just towards things, and the way that, and I went on an extensive tirade about it last episode about Gon and Killua's relationship and how much I absolutely love it and how good I think it is and how well it's portrayed. And it's just more of that, and I absolutely love it because it's just we get to see they're complex characters, Kyle. How about that?
Again, coming off of Black Clover.
I was gonna say, dude, reading Black Clover has like ruined our perspective of stuff because we get like competent writing and we're just like, whoa.
We're given. It's like stop eating out of a dumpster and walking into a McDonald's.
It's like, dude, it doesn't have mold on it.
No,
that's
way.
A bad comparison because anyway, Hunter x Hunter's writing and character writing is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
not
love
the
it.
McDonald's.
But it's we make haha funny memes about it because coming off of Black Clover, it's like, wow, they're characters. That's crazy.
And the thing is, what I like with Gon and Killua is that they do get into fights. It's sometimes friends fight. It's a natural occurrence, and I like how it shows that they can butt heads at times, but still they end up being the best of friends. I like that element to characters. Because then they get into some of the mini fighting where I think Killua gets involved with some of Leol's squad, the Lion Man, and how
after this it's Morel and Nav they get like military info from some general guy or whatnot, and Knuckle and Shoot are talking about the ants, and Knuckle wants to help people, right? He's like, we can't let 5 million people die, and Shoot's like, you can't lose your cool here. He's like, 'cause sure, 5 million people could die. He's like, that's absolutely unacceptable. He's like, but if you lose your cool here and we don't follow the plan and it doesn't work, then everyone's going to die.
It's like a greater good kind of thing where it's like they're going to have to put the 5 million at risk in order to save the entire world.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that is the fight. Gon fights like a snake guy that he beats in like not even a chapter. And then he fights the Batgirl and the Owl guy. You said you didn't really remember this fight really very much, so we'll just go over it. Gon screamed at her and like messed up her echolocation. Gon wins after a little bit of trouble, but someone seems to be watching him. I mean, it was I mentioned at the beginning, it's not a bad fight. It's just
probably the one
it's
I
just
forget.
average, and Kyle forgetting it, I think says a decent bit about it.
I remember so many of these other ones, like because after this, isn't it? I remember Killua's section very well, where it's the Dragonfly and Ikalgo as the sniper.
Yeah. Personally,
That was, oh, sorry. Is that what falls next? I'm just trying to get the timeline set.
Yeah, here just reading my notes. The Ant officers are regrouping under the king. This is not a good thing for our favorite hunters. Yeah, basically the ants are coming. They spread out a little bit, and we kind of see what happened to one nest, but also kind of what was probably happening to more nests with them just getting eviscerated. And so they're coming back, and obviously we learn later that they get their special ability if they come back. We see that Killua is forced to answer in state martial law, based AF. Honestly, as I put in my put in it.
You're that where he incites martial law.
Yeah, where like where he like used like propaganda and stuff. Propaganda at these nuts, lol. Where he like he uses propaganda and stuff to spread rumors that the leader's dead and that like people and like other people have taken control, and so like starts like riots and stuff, and people are like defying orders, and so the ants have to like puppet the leader to be like, yeah, no, I'm alive. We're all Gucci here, and he instates martial law.
Yeah, so then like the government starts taking full control over these regions, right?
Yeah, basically, and the military presence, herding everyone together towards the capital for the selection or the sorting. I can't remember what. I think it's called
the selection.
Selection some, and then Gon knows someone is following him, and yeah, if the officers, dude. So I heard this funny meme, like however long ago, where it's like me getting pulled over after booze cruising. Ossifer, I'm fine. Whenever I see the word officer, my default pronunciation is Ossifer. Every single time I say officer, I have to make an active mental check to say officer and not Ossifer. If I ever get pulled over, I will look at him and say, he's like, "How's your night going, son?" And I'll go, "It's fine, Ossifer." I will say that. I can almost guarantee you I will.
You're going to be escorted out of the car and take a DUI test.
I will. That's so true.
You hit him with the Randy Marshall. What seems to be the officer problem?
If the officers pledge allegiance to the king, Poof will teach him a special ability. Good deal. We see that. Okay. I think is it Leo that gives. It's either Leo or Chidu that gives us that information, or Leol, is that his name?
Leol, yeah,
Leol.
I believe. Either one. It's not too relevant.
Yeah, so it's a thing of how can Poof give them a special ability? Because we know Pito is busted. Is it Pito or P2?
Pitu.
Pitu? That's a fun name.
It's however you want to pronounce it. Doesn't matter.
I see it and I read Pito.
It's okay.
So it's like we know he's insanely busted. So like how is Poof and Yopi? That's the name, right? Yopi? Yopi. We don't see Yopi very much. He doesn't do much at all. And then it's the Killua fights Squid Game.
Okay, so again, this is sort of the sections I enjoy, where look at Gon versus Killua's perspective we're fighting, where Killua is trying to avoid the sniper, but he willingly lets himself just get shot so we can discern his location. That was a nice tactic. Then he goes in and fights him. I like the little scenery he has with the Ikalgo, where it's like, why don't you want to hop in? Is it because you know that your friends are going to kill you? And then he saves the Ikalgo. And then after that, ends up fighting with the Ortho twins with the darts.
Yeah, I will say, Ikalgo. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you, Kyle.
Okay.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you right now.
Okay.
I don't like him. It is the one thing in the Chimera Ant arc that I can say I don't like. I don't like Ikalgo. Ikalgo. I don't like him. I don't care for how Killua spared him. And I don't care for how he's kind of joining Gon and Killua in raiding the mansion. I don't care for it. It's the first thing in the Chimera Ant arc that I will say I dislike.
honestly,
And it's because I can tell you exactly why, and it's for a similar reason I mentioned last episode. We put a pin in, we was talking about going. It reminds me too much of Black Clover, and Black Clover left such a distaste for that kind of writing in my mouth that just reading this, like if I hadn't read Black Clover and I was reading this, I'd be able to overlook it. But like I know how bad this can get, and while I don't expect that Hunter x Hunter will become Black Clover, as I presume I have a lot of good stuff left in the Chimera Ant arc to read. I don't like it, and I'll be completely honest with you there, Kyle. I do not like that.
Do you feel the same whenever Gon befriends the other one that we'll talk about later?
Not as strongly, because that makes more sense. So because because the other dude approached him with like a proposition for an alliance, right? That's completely fine. Ikalgo was an enemy turned friend after giving a sob story, and the protagonist being like, "I think you're pretty cool." Like, but in Gon's case, it's he came up to him with a proposition, and it benefits them both. Like we've seen that there are good Chimera Ants before with Colt, so this is just a good Chimera Ant. And I'm not saying like, Ikalgo can't just be a good Chimera Ant. It's the way he's introduced that left the bad taste in my mouth. If it was something similar to Maria Leona, I can't remember. Malayoron or something. I'm gonna call him Maria Leona because it's easier for me to say.
I'm gonna call him Chameleon.
Chameleon, that works. That's because Chameleon's introduction, like his place in the story currently makes sense. It's like he has a good ability. He his motives make sense, and he approached Gon. It wasn't Gon giving Gon would have spared him, but it wasn't Gon giving mercy to him that put him in the position he's currently in like this main part of the story. But with Ikalgo, he was an enemy. He only turned good after giving a sob story and Killua saving him, and now he is at a very important part in the story. It's kind of similar to my criticism of One Piece, where the whole thing that starts Sabaody and ultimately Sabaody, I don't know. It's a little bit late. I worked all day. You'll have to forgive some of my pronunciations. Where the whole thing that started that was Cammy, and yes, it makes sense, and ultimately it all works out. I love Sabaody, but like I wish it had been someone the Straw Hats knew more, right? Other than someone that they just met.
I think we're going on too long at this point. I understand your criticism of the Ikalgo, and that's fair. If I remember correctly from future segments, I think his inclusion is fine. We'll have to put a pin in Ikalgo and refer to him later. But honestly, like, I think it's impressive that out of everything so far, that's the one thing that you dislike.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot about an arc that there's only one thing I dislike in it. There's not much like that.
It's like a minor gag character almost.
Yeah, almost.
But the next fight, in the anime at least, this was a really fun one. I liked his fight against the Dart Twins, and this was one of those clips I was rewatching, and it made me, it made me appreciate Killua a bit more, because not only does the fight show off his power, it gives him a little bit more to his backstory. Like, obviously, it's kind of a weird leap to be like, oh yeah, of course you would know that game, but it's really funny to think like in an assassin family, darts, a game where it's like precision throwing of sharp objects. It makes sense, and I liked how he won because and it showed off a cool thing with his power, where he was like essentially he made his men his nerves, and instead of going through his brain, it went straight to his hand. Like that is a really cool showcase of his power, where he was it doesn't exist until it pierces me, but if the millisecond it pierces me, I catch it, I'm fine. Yes, the fight itself is really cool because it's showing a lot of drawback, and it's showing a lot of drawbacks to their power, because their power is described as it's a teamwork thing. It's really hard to set up, but if it's set up, unless he misses, it's near invincible.
Yeah, I was gonna say this one, a lot of nin fights kind of. I won't say they feel like stand fights. That's just not true. This one definitely felt like a stand fight.
Yeah, where it's like the villain had an impossible setup, but they set it up, and then once they have this, that
my face when I bury a Lego model of the White House in my yard, and then my neighbor gets crushed.
That's that's a good comparison to it, though, Zone Baby. But just ignoring the comparisons of it, or at least putting those off to the side because I don't want to compare everything just to stand battles. It was a fun fight. Got to show off a lot with Killua, and as you said, it introduced a new element to his power. It's like he can make his nerves just. He can have his Nen just take control of his nerves and just work like electricity.
Yeah, no, it was sick.
They were correct in saying like there was no way an ordinary human would be able to catch that, but he's like, you're right. I just amplified my nerves through electric, which for shonen logic, I think it worked well.
And then after that, Killua is losing all the blood, and it's like, oh, he's in trouble. And then Akalgo saves him, and you're like, okay. I was like, okay.
He owed him one.
And then we get the kind of introduction. We've already touched on it a bit with Chameleon coming in and talking to Gon and being like, hey, like our interests align here, and we get to see Chameleon's ability where he can not only turn himself invisible, he can also like completely erase his presence to where like, how do you remember how it's described exactly?
I'm gonna look up the name for it because I know it had a dope ass name that I was just a huge.
Yeah, no, it's a cool name. And and what's so impressive about it is that it even erases his presence to Gon. And we know that Gon and Killua just have such an insane sense for that kind of thing. And so it was a good introduction of it to be like, yeah, it can even beat them. This is the real thing.
Okay, so here it is. He has, I think it's called Perfect Plan and then God's Accomplice. That's just a really good
that's a cool name.
So he can make himself, he can erase himself from being detected, and he can also do that with other people.
Okay. Yeah, and we learn that whenever he like talks to Gon, and he's like shake my hand. He's like, what's your name, Gon Freaks? And he's like, yeah, this is my third ability. And I was like, oh, he's about to kill him, isn't he? But no, he was still an ally. Like I wrote in my notes specifically. Oh, okay, he's not betraying him. I really thought he was going to betray him.
And again, it's one of those where through the sort of mutation of these ants with humanity, we see that not all of these quote unquote monsters are bad.
Yeah, and this is kind of the third example we've gotten of that, I'll say. Because we have Colt, who very obviously just transfers over to humanity's side. He's against
because he was based on a child as well. Like a child was the ant model he was modeled after, so he's still pretty young and innocent. At least
we also see not necessarily good, but we have the example of Gyro, who we talked about from the last part, where he completely kept his humanity essentially. So we see that the ants are not just ants, and their human past can influence them. And then this is the third example where Gon is specifically like, one of the reasons why I trust you so much is because of how much like a human you seem. He said a very interesting line after the Chameleon did, where he's like, really? He's like, I chose you because you seem like an inhuman beast. And I think it's this guy specifically that says the scariest thing about Gon is that he feels like he has limitless potential.
Yeah. And again, it's like, what would you say it was? He's like, I picked you because you seem nice, and he's like, oh, I picked you because you seem like a beast.
Yeah, he's like, I trust you because you seem most like a human. And he's like, lol.
Do I have something for you? I picked you for the opposite reason. And we'll put a pin in that discussion because there'll be a lot more to discuss on like what makes a good or bad person in the next bit. But
all right. Next, we get the beginning of. Honestly, one of my favorite parts of Black Clover. Oh my gosh, you can tell it's 1 a.m. of Hunter x Hunter. One of my favorite parts of Hunter x Hunter. And that is we get to see the king, Ant Meruem, playing human games. And it starts off with chess and then like Go or something, and then moves on. What's the name of the game, Kyle? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, before that, what he's doing is he's basically like, he's playing games. He brings in the best player of each game, beats them, kills them. He moves on to a game called Gungi, and they bring in a young girl, Komugi.
I love every single interaction the two of them have. It is so good and it is so well written. Oh my gosh. It might be my favorite part of Hunter x Hunter so far, save for Gon and Kilo's relationship.
Like, that's a close second, but even then, like, it's impressive if this newly introduced dynamic is one that beats out a dynamic from, like, established 200 plus chapters already.
And oh my gosh, it's just the Ant King. And I don't know if I've said this on episode yet. I told Kyle I've reversed my thoughts on on his design from last episode. I like it now. It's really grown on me, and part of that is the character has also grown on me. He is being handled so well, I feel. I love his character. If I haven't said it before, or if you haven't watched an episode where I've said it before, my personal thing that I look for with series, my favorite thing, just hands down, my favorite thing that I look for in a series is character writing. I love character writing, and Meruem is done so well. At least at this point. I have past trauma. I have past trauma where amazing characters have been completely butchered in a chapter. So at least at this point, where I am right now at this moment in time, I love his character. And we'll talk more specifics as we get there. But we get the introduction of them. And, something does seem different about her because she manages to beat him. And also she's blind.
Yes, and how she plays is she has Meruem call out the positions on the board, and that's how she plays.
Yeah.
This, as you said, it's such an interesting, just out of left field curveball for the character, but it works. It just fits so well for Hunter x Hunter. I don't know why, because whenever you think of a lot of these overly grand villains and their desires to rule the world, like Meruem flat out just had the mindset of, we are going to turn the entire human populace into a slaughterhouse. Like they will be our food. We're going to awaken Nen and all of them, and we're just going to consume them. Yeah. And then having met Komagi and being stopped because he's, in a way, he's perfect in a lot of elements compared to humans. And this is the first roadblock he's hit, which was really making him just have some reflections on a lot of things about life. It's a very weird inclusion, but I'm just so for it, as you said. It's great character writing for Meruem. I
loved this section and the introduction. We'll talk about specific stuff as we get to it. But next we get to see, and this will be something Kyle can talk about for a little bit. It's Chidu and his ability in his fight with Morel.
Oh, it's a two-parter because right after this he fights Theol, and I have stuff to say on that too. So, this, I don't know how unpopular the opinion is. From what I've heard in the community, people are objectively wrong for not liking Greed Island. But another thing that they're objectively wrong for is disliking G2.
I don't dislike it. I think it is. I really enjoyed the fight. I thought it was super solid, but I would not call it one of my favorite in Hunter x Hunter. So please explain why, Kyle.
It's one of my favorites. And again, this is just the difference of anime and manga reading, I guess, or viewing. So, I don't know. It's just, there's really, I could explain it to you, but it's just one of those where, like, I understand there's a bias to it.
It just kind of hit different.
One of the biases for me is I like ice powers, I like weather powers. One of them that I haven't really mentioned is I like the fast characters, because what often happens is it's a unique trade-off of they're fast but not physically powerful. So I like seeing ways that they make up for it. And his power is a great showcasing of the risk reward that you can have from Nen. Like when he taps Morel, this also, like this fight cemented Morel is one of my favorites. The fight of, you have 8 hours to catch me, and if you don't catch me, you'll probably die. Like that's he never tells what'll happen if you don't catch him, but that's the assumption.
That is assumed.
That is assumed. And it's so interesting to me because Morel just does the complete opposite of what you'd expect in a situation like that, where he walked, like, instead of immediately chasing him, like, because when you hear there's a time limit and if you don't catch him, you die, he just walks around, feels the room, hits the hourglass, and then just goes to take a fucking nap. My dude is goated. And what makes it great is as soon as he gets up, he just, fight's over. And then Chi-Chi's like, what do you mean fight's over? This has been going. He's like, no, fight's over. Look at your foot. And the entire time, during all this waiting, Chi-Chi was trying to play it like a normal fight, but Morel was just 4D chess IQing him out here. It was just so much fun watching him stand up and announce the fight was over, and then just slowly but surely win it by just reeling him in. The moment that was also great is whenever Chi-Chi made a new power, and he's like, why would you want a power that's slower than yourself?
Yeah, dude, and that was even funnier for me because that, like, with him getting a new power, that was the end of a volume. So, like, I'm reading by the volume now. Like, that was the end of volume 22. I was like, okay, I guess Chi-Chi's gonna win now. And I just open up the next chapter on my phone, and he's like, why would you do that? And I was like, oh, okay. that was a volume cliffhanger.
With just all the fake outs in the fight, it was just great. Like, how he stands up, he reels him in, Chi-Chi goes to stab him, and it's just the fake one that he taps him. and it's just a great reinforcement of how nin battles work, where I always like it when every series reinforce how objective feats aren't what sells it. It's your feats, Feats.
Okay.
Objective strength is not all that makes a fight. It's your powers and your wit and how you can creatively use them. That's what I enjoy, and that's what this fight really sold me on. So it probably is just one of those something hit kind of different. And I know it's not the best fight in Hunter x Hunter by far.
I can definitely, I really appreciate this fight because it kind of shows the difference in experience. Because Chi-Chi is like this young ant, and he's like, oh, I have my special new ability, and you'll never win. And Morel is like he's experienced. He knows Chi-Chi's ability better than Chi-Chi does.
Yeah, and he knows the weakness better because he walks in and it's how quickly he's able to grasp the situation. Like, okay, there's a time limit. Why, he didn't make it to where there's something chasing me. Like, if he really wanted to be like to wear me out, he would have had something follow me. He has it set up because that's his ego, and I know how to play around it. So he just attention is what he wants. And in the anime, like, the moment where he lies down, he's like, the moment you give up on annoying me and just walk away, I win. And that's exactly what happens. And it goes all according to the plan, and I love it.
And then in between, it was split into two parts. In between, we get a very, all scenes are very good. We get a very good scene of the king and Komagi playing what's the name again? What's the name of the game again? Gungi. That's a fun name, Gungi. And Gungi. The king comes up with this move where he does a thing, and we see Komagi hesitate for the first time. And you're like, oh no, the king got her. But then she does like one thing, and it completely turns everything around. And the king's like, I admit defeat. He's like, but how did you do that? He's like, why did you hesitate if you knew that? If you were able to come back from it so easily? And then we learned that's actually what he did, what he came up with just right now was actually a move or like a setup that she created. And back however long, that was so cool. And it like reigned supreme until one time she was in a tournament and someone used it against her. And it just came to her, the counter, and she used it. And it essentially killed the technique because you couldn't use it because everyone knew the counter. And so it touched her. Like she hesitated because, as she put it, she was like it was like I didn't want to kill my child for a second time. And that, man, just I love her character so much, and I love the king. And we get Poof, I think it was. Poof is a very interesting. His perspective on everything throughout this was very interesting. And he's the one who was like the king has never let anyone talk that long before.
Hold on. Okay, this actually helped because do you mind if I share an interpretation I heard about Poof?
Yeah, sure.
Similarly to how Makima never saw Denji and only saw Chainsaw Man, Poof doesn't see Meruem. He only sees the king.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good comparison. That's a really good comparison.
Honestly, okay, I was going to say something else, but that comparison just popped up in my head. That was not what I heard from someone else. So that was a me original, but...
I'm original, bro.
But what I like the comparison was that without Chainsaw Man, that he didn't see Meruem as a person. He just saw him as like a king, an idea that he, like a perfect idea in his head, that he's just disappointed that the king isn't living up to what he thought of was the king. And he's like, as you said, how could he let someone speak like that? The king would never. How is this peon little human in the presence of our Lord, our God, and our Savior, the Ant King? And thinks like this person is tainting what I see as the perfect king. We should get rid of her. I should kill her.
Yeah, and that was something I think technically that moment comes a little bit later. But yeah, he's like, should I? She's like, should I kill her? He's like, this girl is a threat to the king. And then he's like, but if I killed her now, the king would be forever a loser. And he's like, oh, I could never do this again. That was an interesting little piece of personality to learn of him.
It's just funny thinking of. He's like, as soon as the king wins, I'm gonna lop her head off.
Yeah.
If he ever did.
After that, we get to see
I was gonna say one.
Oh yeah,
one thing. When is it later? Whenever the king makes the bet with her, that later.
It's like after this next plot point.
Okay, so after he's done fighting Chitu, Morel moves on to fighting the main.
I think
guy.
his fight with Leol comes a tiny bit later, but it comes like
I thought it
basically
happened
right
now.
then. No, it's this is whenever we learn Leol's Nin ability.
Oh yeah, where you can just take other people's nen, right?
Yeah, and basically it's kind of like it works kind of it's weird. It works kind of like the receipt guy from Jujutsu Kaisen. It's somewhat similarly. Receipts are used, and you have to do something with the receipt. Like everything else is different, but it kind of reminded me of that a tiny bit.
All I know is like he can use other people's nen, the people that he eats, right?
No, what it is he has to either see the ability used or know its name, and he has to do something for them, do like a favor for them, and then say something like, oh, you owe me for this one, and then they have to say something affirmative. And then he has their ability that he can use. He can use it for 1 hour, and he has a little thing. He prints out like a receipt of it, and he rips it. And that's how he uses it.
Okay, yeah.
So it reminded me of the receipt guy from Jujutsu Kaisen.
It's a very specific niche power, but I think that works pretty well.
If I had a nickel for every time someone had to break a receipt to get an item as a power in a shonen, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
I was going to say 3, but then I realized JoJo Lands isn't out yet.
JoJo Lands is never coming out, Kyle. The sooner you accept it, the better.
But getting back on track for the Chimera ants.
The next little part is actually another. It's a very pivotal scene. A lot of interesting stuff happens here. We see the king and Komagi playing again, and he's like let's make a bet. He's like greed and whatnot will get into her mind and she'll lose. And it's like, let's make a bet. He's like, if you win, you can have anything you ask for. He said anything at all whatsoever. And she's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, if I win, he's like, I'm going to take your left arm, I think it was. And she was like, that's fine. She's like, but I'd rather bet what I always bet on it. And the king's like, what? And she's like, my life. Because we learn that like the only thing she is good at is this game. Gungi, right? Gungi?
And if she loses in Gungi, she's basically lost her life.
Yeah,
so
because it's like, what you call it? She said the only way to make money with it is to become like the world champion. And she has like a family of 12. And she's just like, if I can't play Gungi, I'm as good as dead. And she says, I'm actually sorry that all I can offer you is my life. Because she's like, if I lose at that point, it's absolutely worthless. And just more great characterization from her, and just more great like lines. That's just giving Meruem just more like insight on life, I guess. I mean, really, we can see how it's affecting him throughout this part of kind of the Chimera Ant arc. And he's actually he says like he's like let's call off the bid. He's like, I'm sorry for ever bringing it up. And he's like here's what I'll do as payment, and he rips off his arm.
And that freaks her out even more than the pet idea.
Yeah. And that freaks her out. She's like, I'm not going to play until your arm is better. And he's like, you're going to play. And he like puts his stinger up to her forehead, and she's like, if you're going to kill me through Gungi.
Yeah. Then he's like, fine, Patu, come fix my arm while I play. Doesn't he punch Poof?
Well, yeah, it's Poof tries to get him, and Poof is like, at least let Patu fix your arm while you're playing. He's like, fine. And this gives Nav the opportunity, because it releases Patu's in over the area to like where he's like not watching, essentially, to let Nav sneak into the mansion and to place his portals there so that the raid on the mansion can happen.
Yeah, so they have an entrance.
Yeah, and this is also where he gets a nice big whiff of. I thought it was Patu's. The wiki says it was Poof's. I'm more inclined to believe the wiki.
Well, hold on. I think what happened was after like Poof. This is just me trying to put it back together, the pieces. After Poof got like punched by the king and was just mad, he just. I think this is from what I can remember. Like got so mad he just shot at all of his end. And he's like, that's some murderous intent right there. I'm going to go and never come back. I think.
From what I remember with reading it, it was like he was there and he was doing fine until he got to the staircase. And then he felt it / saw it. And that really scared him. And he's like, I can't go back there. And he specifically said, he's like, it is insane how Gon and Killua were able to like be right next. And I think this is what made me think it was Patu, because he was like, it's insane how Gon and Killua were able to be right next to it and to like be right there, and they still want to go back. And they were next to Patu, and it shows them with Patu. And there's this awesome panel I'll put up on screen. He's like, it's insane. He's like, I can't go back.
I think it's in reference to like being near one of the royal guards. Either way, it whether or not it's Poof or Patu,
it's an insignificant point, I think, unless it becomes a big pop point later. It doesn't matter whose it is. Basically, it's a setup of the royal guards are insane, which we already know, but it's more set up towards it.
Yeah, and then after this, I think is whenever we get Leol's fight with Immoral.
Yes, it is. I'll leave you to talk about that. I think you're better to talk about the fights.
Yeah, because the fights just they leave a better impression in the anime from what I've seen. And with Morel, his power, purple smoke, I think or purple haze. I literally think it's called purple haze.
It might be. I think if it was called purple haze, I might have. It's something similar. We can call it whatever.
Hold on, quick search. Don't worry,
quick
fans.
Little Google search. I feel like if it was purple haze, I would like. I feel like that's something I would notice, but also I read this part at work, so it's I'm not 100% certain.
I think it's called deep purple.
Yeah, it's deep purple. That's exactly what it is.
Deep purple. Okay, yeah, we're professional here. So, Morel is probably one of my favorite, maybe not characters, but at least one of my favorite fighters in Hunter x Hunter, because, again, versatility with fights. I like when fights provide versatile use of powers, and in every fight that he's in where he can use his smoke, he just does so many fun things with it, and it kind of leaves you with like a what's going to happen next kind of feeling. When he's fighting Leol pulls out the power that he borrowed from one of Morel's buddies, where I think it's like on a rainy day he can make a tsunami.
Yeah, it's Catch the Rainbow, but better.
Because he actually make his own water. He floods this underground church, and they have a fight for a little bit. And there's some cool stuff that happens in between it. Won't get into too many details there. I'd recommend just watching it. But the ending of the fight is just so fucking funny to me. How what happens? Where Leol he makes a whirlpool and pulls Morel under the water, and so. Because Morel, like with his powers, I'm gonna say like naturally has like deeper or better lungs and could store more air. Through his power, what he does is he starts poofing up some of the air back up into where Leol is, but makes it deadly with carbon dioxide. And so
yeah, I like the explanation for it was this dude breathes so much.
He breathes so much.
That was the
Just
explanation. I was like, okay, that's pretty funny.
It stuffed the room with carbon dioxide, and the old died because of carbon dioxide poisoning.
I think he drowned. He passed out because of it, and then like he couldn't swim or so he drowned is what it was.
Either way, yeah, if you pass out in the water because of that, you're gonna drown and die. That was just so fucking funny to me when I first watched it.
It was really funny.
he just breathes so good. He dies. He kills his opponent.
He does breathe so good. He dies, doesn't he?
But that's just why I like Morel, where they give them a very loose power and they're allowed to be creative with it. And it fits the setting where he floods the church and there's only so little air where he's at. So if it gets contaminated with carbon dioxide, he just drowns. It's just funny to me, like the frame in the anime where he's just sitting there thinking like, yeah, the fight's over, and Leo's just dying.
Yeah.
Good fight. Good fight.
It was solid. It was solid.
Solid. I think if you see it in the anime, you'd appreciate it better. But for at least in the manga, solid.
I will eventually see it in the end. I can almost guarantee you I'm going to watch it at some point. We're going to watch clips of it later, but that's a different thing. That's us in real life. We don't actually have lives. I just sit in my room, read Hunter x Hunter, and then record.
Consume.
The next little bit is a bit that I will admit I didn't like. It's Killua waking up and the octopus guy is there, and they're like, "Oh, we're friends now." And the octopus guy is like, "I've always wanted friends." And you can feel the sarcasm dripping from my note I wrote over this. Octopus guy and Killua are friends. How sugary sweet. To call it objectively bad, I can't, and I won't try to. I definitely disliked this part. And I've already said I dislike the octopus guy. Do you have anything to say on that, Kyle?
No, we can just move on to the better section where we get another Chimera moment.
We do. This is where I mentioned earlier where Pooh sees her as a liability. We learn that her and the king are improving at the same time. So, it's not just the king improving, which is what he did with every other king. Obviously, he is improving, but she's also improving. And then we see that she awakens to Nin.
And her Nen is just letting her be better at Gungi.
That's so based.
It's the only thing that she's good at, so it makes sense.
And again, her being blind and her having chronic allergies or whatever it is. Her nose is always stuffed up, which is the way she talks is very endearing. I don't know how it sounds in the anime, but in the manga, it's very endearing.
I'll just pull out the world's smallest violin for any time she's unseen.
Yeah, basically. But what you call it? So she awakens Nin, and then we get to see. This was such a good scene for the king's character because he asks her for her name, and that really speaks volumes for it's such good writing, dude. Really, Togashi has really proven himself throughout this arc. And, obviously, with my little escapade on Gon and Killua's friendship from last episode, but also with this, just the writing is so good. There's so much nuance behind him asking her what her name is. And, her responding, Komagi, we finally learned her name. And then she asks him for his name, and he's like, what is my name? We know it's Meruem. The question is, will he ever learn that it's Meruem? But that question, it gets him interested enough that he calls the royal guards to him, and he's like Pito. He's like, you're Pito, and he's like, Poof, you're Poof. He's like, but what's my name? And they're like, well, you're the king. He's like, we're gonna kill every other king and whatnot, every big person. So whenever people think king, they think you. He's like, yeah, but that's a title, not really a name, so much. And then he starts talking about here, if I can remember more of exactly what he says through my notes, where the king is talking about doing everything he's done basically, and specifically he mentions the child that he killed at the beginning, and what he does is he's talking and he asks them, he's like, he tells them that Komagi awakened to Nin, and he's like, with the selection. He's like, would she survive that? And P2 is like, no. He's like, it's only tailored to those who It's only people with combat capabilities will survive. And he's like, and the king's like, I've realized that there are multiple forms of strength, and that it's not just all like countable, like in a combat sense. And then he mentions the little girl. He's like that child I killed could have grown up to become anything, could have grown up to become insanely strong and all that. And he's like, and I nipped that life in the bud. And all this time we get Poof's inner monologue of no. He's like, don't, what you were saying about how it's kind of similar to how Makima never saw Denji. She only saw Chainsaw Man. Poof is like, he's like, no. He's like, you can't say these things. He's like it's unbefitting of a ruler. He's like, you can't reflect on your actions. He's like, you've done nothing wrong, right? And then he's about to say something, and then we get it was a really cool panel. I'm guessing it was presented really well too in the anime, of the king's face just like smiling and like a sadistic grin. He's like, I nipped that life in the bud. And he's like, if that isn't true power, what is? It's like being able to control stuff to that extent. He's like, things only exist by my whim. And I think his quote is something around violence is the ultimate power in the world. And so that was such a cool, like, almost twist. Because the entire time you think that the king's becoming good, and he's like, oh, he's regretting the death of a child, and it's like that's Komiki's influence on him. But then you see, no. Is he changing? Yes. He's becoming more of a character. He's thinking more. But he's still the Chimera Ant King. He still wants power. It was such a good moment. And Poof was like, he's like, I was worried for nothing.
Yeah. Immediately after that, doesn't he think like he intends on killing her, and then immediately with the 180, he starts showing concern for her whenever she starts being attacked like a crow.
Yeah, it was crow, some bird. Yeah, so he's like, I don't even need her. He's all hyped up on his little villain monologue he gave.
That's so funny.
And what was that?
I just thought it was something funny. It's like that Scooter meme where it's like, it must be like, can't stand humans. 10 minutes later, me and the bestie.
That's so true. Me and the bestie. But yeah, then he's like, I don't even need her. He's like, what was I even doing keeping her here? He's like, I'm going to kill her. He's like, I'm ending this now. He opens the door, and she's being attacked by a crow, and just immediately on instinct he kills it, and he runs up to her, and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, you were attacked. Like, you were being attacked. Why did you call out for anyone? He's like, why did you just let this happen? He's like, you're bleeding everywhere. And she's like, well, it was early in the morning. I didn't want to disturb anyone. And this is where, oh my gosh, his character is so good, because we get the inner monologue of him being like, why am I saying these things? He's like, I came here to kill her, didn't I? But on the outside, he's saying you need to be more careful. He's like, next time, tell people. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think he said something along the lines of like I can't lose you or something. It was something super nice, and she like started crying, and she was like, that's the nicest anyone's ever been to me. And the entire time his inner monologue is like, he's like, what's going? He's like, why am I saying these things? He's like, why are you crying? He's like, what's going on here? And it's just, oh my gosh, it's so good. It is so good. Honestly, like Killua and the king are fighting for the spot of best written character in Hunter x Hunter, and the king might be winning currently.
The king is the king.
King is the king. That's true.
My goodness. It's just hearing you talk about it and like reflecting on what's happened, what's happening, and what will happen. It's, as you said, it's just so good.
And then I can't believe I forgot this. He walks out and he goes to P2 and he asks him, he's like, did you know that she was being attacked? And he was like, yeah. He's like, I just didn't want to bother anyone with it. He's like, I thought it didn't matter. And the king's like, from now on, keep an eye on her. And I was just like, yo. And P2 was like, what?
Can't stand humans. 10 minutes later, me
and the bestie.
No, but it's a great moment because it's, again, one thing I enjoy with villains is having some complexity. I enjoy seeing the different sides, the different emotional aspects to their characters, and Meruem is perfect for it.
And it's just the question that I have as someone who doesn't know anything past this point of what side is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
like I'm obviously not going to give an answer, but
yeah. It'd be funny if you just answered and just spoiled the entire arc for me. Lol, that'd be so funny.
No, I'm not going to.
And then just at the end, we see everyone in the castle getting ready to fight. Morel is like, he's like, I'm at maybe 35% of my full potential. He's like, but I have to go out there and fight. He's like, as long as I can get the royal guard away from the king for Netero to fight him, he's like, then I've done my part. And what's his name? The Nav.
Yeah.
And Nav's like, I'm sorry guys. He's like, I just can't go. And everyone's getting ready for the palace invasion part of the Chimera Antarch. And the final couple panels of that volume, of that chapter, were the king kind of just being, pondering and being like, he's like, what was my purpose in being born? He's like, why was I born? Again, just adding more complexity to him. And it's the question of what answer is he going to find? I cannot wait to find out. So, the heavy quotation marks, the second third of the Chimera Antarch. What did I think of it? I really liked it. I mean, I'm loving the Chimera Antarch. I told this to Kyle before recording. This arc is definitely cementing itself as my favorite Hunter x Hunter arc, and it's definitely cementing Hunter x Hunter in a place of my favorite shonen. And Greed Island was phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely loved Greed Island. So to call it one of my favorite shonen at that point probably wouldn't be a stretch. But a Hunter x Hunter, Togashi's really showing off here with the Chimera arc so far. And the fights maybe left a little bit to be desired for me, and part of that I really think that a lot of that is from just my perspective of knowing this is the Chimera Antarch.
I just want to say I want you to quote yourself on that, and I want you to eat your words. Next time.
The fights leave something to be desired.
Yeah.
All right. I'll quote myself on that, Kyle. All right, I'll take your challenge there.
Right.
But I can tell something's becoming like a favorite of mine, and I'll tell you this, Kyle. It's whenever I can listen to the opening and I get goosebumps. If I get goosebumps listening to the opening of a show, thinking about like what happens in that show, it's one of my favorite. It happens with We Are. I've been listening to Departure a lot, and I really like Departure. I can't imagine it in front of the Chimera Antarch, but I really like Departure.
Oh, it's completely fucked up because you get done watching an episode where somebody gets just torn limb from limb, and then it's however it starts, and then it's just happy, cheery. You can try. I'm like, you certainly can try.
you certainly can try. But I am loving the Chimera Antarch so far. I have my criticisms of it, but I have my criticisms of everything.
And as a return veteran to this arc, just listening in on it, just rereading some of the summaries for it, and just remembering everything that made me love it for the first time, I'm falling in love all over again. It's insane the effect that this arc has on people who watch Hunter x Hunter. Because okay, you watch the first few arcs, the Exam, Heaven's Arena, you watch York New, and then Greed Island. You're like, okay, this is a pretty good shonen. It's pretty
solid. It's solid.
It's a solid shonen. It's better than Black Clover. That's not a high bar to beat.
Yeah, back in 2002, they finished up Greed Island, and they were like, "This is so much better than Black Clover."
But with the Chimera arc, it's just in 3 words, it hits different.
It do hit different though. I will say, I don't think I've said this on episode yet. I'm 2/3 is what we say. Technically, I'm a bit over half. I really like the arc. I love a lot of what it's doing. I wouldn't call it one of the best shonen arcs ever yet. From the point I'm at, and obviously this isn't a fair comparison because I'm not done. It doesn't compare to Marineford or Shibuya currently. Or, there's not one Chainsaw Man arc that like stands above the rest. Maybe International Assassins, but just
think about it like this. Hold on. Think about it like this. Halfway through Marineford or Shibuya, did you consider them as like the staple arcs?
Yeah, and that's the thing that like with Shibuya, like I didn't acknowledge it for everything it was until the end. and like having that complete picture, like, oh my god, that was phenomenal.
Same with Marineford too, and for the Chimera Ant arc, it's one of the most, if not just, it's an arc in a shonen unlike anything that's been seen up until the point that it was written.
And I loved your comparison last episode, Kyle, where you were like, it feels like it was not an Hunter x Hunter arc, but like an arc set in the Hunter x Hunter world. Like, I've been thinking about that a lot while I was reading. Like, yeah, this does feel like just like an arc set in the Hunter x Hunter world.
But it fits so well because, hunters, so far in the series, hunters haven't really been used to what people would think of hunter. When you hear hunter, you think of like hunting animals, and so this is that first arc that when they actually start fulfilling what hunters do, it's the most unlike anything in Hunter x Hunter.
Exactly. Well, do you have any final thoughts to say here at 1:45 a.m.?
Yeah.
I have to get up tomorrow.
Same. The last thing I'll say is Brandon's halfway through, and we are going to be kicking things like shit's going to hit the fan as soon as we talk next time, because he's kicking off the Palace invasion. It was a long time in the making. As a person who's watched the anime, it is certainly a very, very long time in the making for it. You've made it through the build-off phase, and I cannot wait to see what you think of the payoff phase of the Chimera.
Get ready for next video. It's to see it top 2 hours is not unrealistic.
Oh, absolutely not. Brandon,
I am dead set on finishing this thing as a trilogy, and I feel like once I start this next part, I just kind of want to read to the end,
I don't think you're gonna put it down just from what I remember.
Legit. I have stuff to do tomorrow morning, and then I'm free for the rest of the day. My plan is to sit down and finish the Chimera Ant arc. Am I ready, Kyle?
I don't think you are.
I don't think am I not ready?
I wasn't. It really do be one of those arcs where people are like, I've seen Sean I get hang with, and they walk out of it, and it's like they're just I don't know, stuck in thought.
I will say the two things I am so interested to hear about whenever I finish this arc is, one, what Wyatt spoiled me on, and two, the moment that he watched it for. And I kind of want to guess. I don't think I can guess what he spoiled me on, because he just said something to me, and Kyle was like, that spoils the entire arc, and I don't remember what he said. So I'm interested to hear about what he said.
I don't understand how thankful I am. Like, it's just one of those where it's like, I'm just happy that you didn't remember it. Because
it meant nothing to me. At the time he said it, I didn't intend to read Hunter x Hunter. What's a chainsaw, man? Oh my gosh, we need to end the episode. If you enjoyed this episode, if you're still here after an hour and however long, you obviously enjoy something. Like and subscribe. Go to the Rat's Nest. It's my channel for more manga reviews. Kyle and I review Chainsaw Man and One Piece weekly. Kyle, say goodbye. Bye-bye.
We'll see you guys in the next review when we do Palace Invasion. Bye-bye.